What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, October 28th, 2020, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting long, slow glide down to Powhatan on Friday, and whatever insanity is going to be ensuing. Well, we're coming up on Election Day, 6 days from now, and that's going to be a very, very crazy event here. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. Mike is in our control room, keeping us out of trouble, and we're going to do news until we run out of news, and then we'll take phone calls. Maybe a little late getting to the phone calls because there's a lot of news out there. And what a crazy weather day it is down in the Gulf. Hurricane Zeta is growing stronger than was originally estimated. They're figuring by the time it comes on shore tonight over New Orleans, it's going to be a Cat 2 hurricane. And, those poor people in New Orleans, I think this is the 5th major storm they've had to endure this season. Meanwhile, Oklahoma is under a heavy ice storm. Other places, there are hailstorms with like golf ball sized hail, could cause a lot of damage here. And we're actually under a flood watch here in Indiana until this time tomorrow. So things are getting really weird out there. Okay, now the big news, at least in my opinion, certainly not in the opinion of the corporate media, is last night on the Tucker Carlson show, he devoted the entire 1-hour program to an interview with Tony Babilinski. And Babilinski was basically coming on out and saying that he'd felt insulted and slighted and defamed, and tarred was another word that he used, when Schiff came on out saying that this whole Hunter Biden business dealing laptop was a Russian plot. And Tony Babilinski is a former naval officer. He's got top secret clearances with various intelligence agencies. And he felt he wanted his name cleared. So he basically sent word that unless Adam Schiff retracted that statement, he was going to go public with all of this stuff. And of course, Adam and the corporate media are still out there saying Russian plot, Russian plot, Russian plot, like we haven't all been down that road once before. So Tucker Carlson interviewed Tony Babilinski. It was his best media coverage since the press conference that nobody showed up to. And Tony was out there saying he's got all the emails and documents. He's got copies of everything, proving everything he's saying, copies of the text. And of course, he's provided copies of all of this stuff to Fox News. And apparently, last night's Tucker Carlson show drew a record viewership of something like 5.3 million. So a lot of people were tuning on in. To nobody's surprise, none of the other corporate media outlets, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, none of them touched the story. They're still on out there saying that this is all a huge Russian plot. And basically, Babilinski was talking about how he met Joe Biden twice. He got to sit in on one of his speeches and presentations here and was just outraged at the blatant lying that Joe Biden did about his family's business dealings and how he wasn't really connected when all of the evidence, of course, says otherwise. Now, apparently, Babilinski's announcement that he was going to go public on all of this drew a lot of negative reactions from Biden insiders. And apparently, Hunter Biden's ex-business partner, Tony, blowing the lid off the family's corruption, they played an audio tape of one of the Biden insiders saying, quote, "You're going to bury all of us," end quote. Now, the good news is Tucker Carlson is following up tonight with more audio recordings of Biden insiders begging, pleading, and threatening Tony Babilinski, to stay quiet, not to go public with all of this. But, it's out there. The evidence is out there. The laptop is out there. The chain of custody on that is well established. That machine the FBI is in possession of definitely came from the repair shop, who definitely got it from Hunter Biden. Now, one of the other things that Tony Babilinski commented on is that Joe Biden was the chairman. And one of the things that he did is that he ruled out having tighter controls for Hunter's China business. And, you know, the suggestion had come up through management that things were a little too loosey-goosey, and they really needed to have proper controls to make sure they were fully in compliance with various laws. And Joe Biden said no. There are video excerpts from this all over the place. There was a complete video of the Tucker Carlson show on YouTube. That's been taken down. But of course, you can go over to the Tucker Carlson website and you can play the entire interview through your local TV provider. They don't have an online streaming version yet. I would definitely say program your DVR to catch tonight's follow-up episode because again, this is information that needs to get on out there, and you should share it with everybody that you know. You should take all of these Hunter Biden, Joe Biden corruption stories and email them to your friends who are still kind of on the fence as to which way they're going to vote, and then ask them to forward the email on to people they know who are still on the fence, because Facebook can't stop email yet. I know Gmail can, but Facebook can't. And we need to get this story out. Now, what you're going to run into is a lot of people coming back and saying, what does it matter now? It's too late. The election's already decided. And no, it isn't. And we know that because of the trending search on Google for how do I change my vote? And apparently in 7 states, you can change your mail-in ballot vote. You have to go to the local voter registrar or the city clerk and say, I wish to change my vote. And there's a paperwork thing you got to go through. But it can be done. And apparently people are now changing their vote because of stuff that is coming on out here. Okay, so another Hunter Biden audio has surfaced in which he admits to a partnership with China's spy chief, and Joe Biden is named as a criminal case witness. Now, this is coming from the National Pulse, and it reveals Hunter Biden discussing business with a spy chief of China and how his business partner, Devon Archer, named him and his father as witnesses in a Southern District of New York criminal case. So it is all unraveling here, and I don't think it's too late to affect the outcome of the election. Certainly, we have in recent days seen the polls start to really tighten, and knowing how biased the corporate media polls are, such as polling more Democrats than Republicans, I think that maybe we are seeing a repeat of 2016, where the polls and corporate media were all saying Hillary, Hillary, and it was Trump. And here in 2020, the polls and the corporate media are all saying Biden, Biden, and it looks like Trump may pull it off despite the massive election fraud that has already surfaced on this. Unfortunately, because of all the election fraud that's going on, this election is also going to morph into a repeat of 2000, where it's going to wind up in the courts all the way to the Supreme Court. And I noticed already the Democrats are screaming that newly confirmed Justice Barrett should recuse herself from any Supreme Court cases involving the election. Well, that's not going to happen. That's absolutely not going to happen. Apparently, outside a Biden event in Georgia, people were chanting, "Where's Hunter? Where's Hunter? Where's Hunter?" So it's getting intense out there, and we can't have this guy in the White House. Look how he sold out the country as vice president. What do you imagine he's going to do as president? And because of how scandalous all of this is, and we're not even getting into Hunter Biden's sex tapes and everything, we're seeing this unprecedented degree of damage control from the corporate media and the Democrats trying to protect Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And it's just, really, it's very intense out there. Now, CNN is refusing to run a pro-Trump ad saying that it falsely asserts Biden will raise taxes. Well, that's not a false assertion. Biden is out there on video saying he's going to raise taxes on people making more than $400,000 a year, which is the typical soak the rich rhetoric that goes over well with working class voters. The problem is if he rescinds the Trump tax cuts, rather, it's going to boost taxes for everybody. It's estimated it'll be around $6,000 a year for middle-class families. But CNN is out there saying that the ad violates their commercial clearance standards and they're not going to run it. They really are. They are really exposing themselves as being no longer interested in doing journalism. They're in a panic. Because a Trump second term, there's nothing holding him back from going after these large corporate media outlets and demanding they be broken up the way they're already trying to break up social media. And I think that would be a good thing. Because when you have lots and lots of little newspapers and lots of little TV stations, you have a diversity of opinion that allows people to make good choices. And there used to be laws in this country that limited the size of media, of how much media any one entity could own. But going on back to Operation Desert Storm, the government made a deal with the larger media outlets, report the war the way we want it reported, and we'll rescind those laws and you can start gobbling up all your small competition, which is exactly what happened. Now, the Washington Post actually came out saying they're going to treat the Biden leaks as if they're a foreign intelligence operation, even if they aren't. That's the Washington Post that's out there saying they're going to continue to report it as a foreign intelligence operation, even though the evidence continues to mount that it's all genuine. And you have the heads of various intelligence agencies saying there is absolutely no evidence supporting the idea that the Hunter Biden laptop is a foreign intelligence operation. Because if you really stop and think about it, you know, what this whole Russian interference theory is saying is that somehow Russia got Hunter Biden to drop his laptop in a puddle of water. Then they convinced him to take it to this store, this computer repair place. Then they convinced Hunter Biden to simply abandon it there, where it was filled with all kinds of nefarious disinformation. It doesn't really make sense if you think about it. That's a real long stretch to try and make. But, you know, they're desperate out there. They really are desperate out there. Facebook and Twitter are completely blacklisting all links from Natural News or Brighteon.com, waging war on independent platforms. And, you know, it means that even people who want to share important news stories or videos from these two sites are unable to do so. Google has also blacklisted both of these domains from all search results. I mean, it is really getting out in the open just how tyrannical social media has become, how much in the pocket of the government and corporations they are. And they're there to enforce the orthodox view. They are no longer there connecting people to information, which is what Google used to say was their business. So apparently, there is a project funded by Mark Zuckerberg to financially support government election processes across the country. And basically, the group is calling it a rejection of legal challenges. Basically, the short version is Zuckerberg is paying election officials. Gee, I wonder if that's going to impact their objectivity. Now, Rudy Giuliani got into feisty mode over on Fox News with business host Kennedy, Lisa Kennedy, Montgomery is her full name. And apparently Giuliani unloaded on her when she tried to compare Giuliani to Christopher Steele. And as we all know, Christopher Steele was lying about the so-called P dossier. And so this Fox News host was trying to imply that everything Giuliani has been putting out there is another carefully crafted lie to work against Joe Biden. Over at Rolling Stone, Matt Taibbi had a great little article, 10 ways to call something Russian disinformation without evidence, because that is the problem all of these people pushing Russian plot have. There is no evidence to support it. There was no evidence to support it when they said it was Trump. Okay, it was just constant haranguing and repetition and reach, just trying to hard sell this whole idea. And, you know, we're all suffering Russia burnout. We've been down this road before. You know, we got the song and dance about Russian interference and Russian collusion with Trump. And we've reached this very, very bizarre situation where Trump got impeached for making a phone call to Ukraine about Biden's corruption. And yet the media is now ignoring the evidence of Biden's corruption in Ukraine. That's how completely one-sided this has all become. It's like we've fallen through the mirror, and, you know, we're following Alice down into Wonderland where everything is completely surreal. Okay, writing in the Washington Post, senior Obama-era official Samantha Power is calling on Facebook to crush what she calls conspiracy theories and disinformation circulating on the platform. And Samantha Power is out there saying Facebook is being overrun with foreign disinformation, demanding Zuckerberg take far more drastic steps to detox the company's algorithm. Now, Facebook has their little censorship squad over there, which is hardly objective. It's all far-right people and Israel supporters. And another story, very troubling here, this is a Natural News here, saying that if Biden steals the election, there's going to be a great purge, that they're going to come after the independent media and try and shut it down. Because what we have succeeded in doing in the last 20 some odd years here is we have taken away the government's ability to lie to you, the people, with impunity, and they don't know how to run a government without that. The idea of running a government at the same time you're being truthful and honest, it's just not in their vocabulary. They can't think of a way to do that. You know, I would go back and reread the original Constitution for some clues about that. But apparently, there's a new story over at Yahoo News titled Biden's First War Would Have to Be Against Propaganda. And what they're really talking about is targeting the independent media. That means us. Okay, and probably RBN as well. You will watch ABC, you will watch NBC, you will watch CBS, and you will believe as we tell you to believe. Now, a little bit of good news here. 15 popular YouTube creators have filed a federal First Amendment lawsuit against both YouTube and Google. And according to the lawsuit, Google and YouTube breached the terms of service these creators had agreed to when they signed on by violating their First Amendment rights. And of course, all of these social media companies, they are counting on a Biden victory to protect them from the backlash for just the incredible degree that this almost Soviet-style censorship over the internet. Okay, now a little bit of occasional good news coming out of CNN. Apparently, Jake Tapper took crazy Nancy Pelosi to the woodshed for failing to agree to a deal for the coronavirus relief bill. And of course, it's really come on down where Trump is willing to make, you know, an agreement that deals with coronavirus relief. Nancy Pelosi is pushing this other deal, which includes money for failed Democrat-run states, Democrat-run cities, changes to the election law, all kinds of stuff. And she is standing firm and saying that Trump is the one who's getting in the way of people getting some stimulus money to deal with the economic hard times caused by the pandemic. And there they sit facing each other. But I think more and more people are realizing that it is the Democrats that have thrown a roadblock because they understand Trump wants to pass a bill that deals with the current crisis, okay, and not load it up with a bunch of pork the way the Democrats have done. Okay, now apparently there's been an upsurge in violence against the president's supporters in recent weeks. We'll talk about this more after we come back to these commercials. Welcome back to our show here. And as that Samantha Power story and the Yahoo News story should underscore, we are in a war. It's the big corporate media and social media against the independent media. They want us silenced so that they can go back to lying to you, and you have no choice but to basically accept what they're telling you and throw your money and your children onto whichever war against whichever enemy we happen to pick next. I think they're starting these wars using a dartboard here. So one more time, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay, getting on back to this story here. The Trump campaign is calling out the unprovoked violence against Trump supporters in recent weeks. There have been attacks all the way across the country from New York City to San Francisco. And basically, a Trump campaign spokesman on Fox News said no one should be attacked for peacefully showing their support of the president, and all Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, should be disgusted by this type of unprovoked violence. I'm absolutely in agreement with that, and they're illustrating the attacks after this family of 7 with 4 children were pepper sprayed by counter protesters while they were participating in a pro-Trump vehicle caravan in New York City. And so be very, very careful, because you're targets for physical violence if you support Trump. And it is certainly wrong. I mean, that's brown shirt behavior. That's what the brown shirts did in Germany to help Hitler seize power. They went on out and they beat up supporters of his opposition to silence them. So, keep that in mind. We're making the same mistakes all over again. Okay, let's see. Another story. This one is from Your Destination Now, saying another top pollster is out there saying Trump is gaining more black voter support than any GOP president in memory. That's going to have a significant effect. I think the black voters have come to understand that the Democrats are always promising them a better life, but it has never really materialized. They're still being figuratively kept down on the plantation here. Now, Donald Trump is starting to raise an issue over all these states that want to go on counting ballots for 2 weeks after the election. Now, he made a mistake saying it's not by our laws. And actually, to the best of my research, there is no actual law regarding how long it takes to count the votes. The only law is that all the votes be received by November 3rd. Of course, in the early days of the country, before telegraph and radio and television and internet, it would often be weeks before people knew the outcome of the election. That's why one of the reasons there is such a long gap between Election Day and Inauguration Day. Of course, with modern technology, it can be instantaneous. It doesn't necessarily need to be instantaneous. But I agree, 2 weeks is long enough to gin up boxes and boxes of phony ballots with phony postmarks on them. I mean, there is no mechanism in the postmarking system to prevent counterfeiting a postmark. It's wide open. Anybody can just take a postmark and make a rubber stamp from it and put it in a machine and just start stamping out ballots like crazy here. Okay, now, over at Judicial Watch, they're still doing great work there. New stock page emails are showing missing meeting entries. Now, what that means is Judicial Watch received 163 pages of emails between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, and the records prove that they had multiple meetings that were missing from the calendar Lisa Page submitted during the Mueller investigation. They were hiding them. They were hiding those meetings here. So the corruption continues here. Little flashback on Kamala Harris, and this is coming from thejewishvoice.com. So Peter Schweitzer, author of Profiles in Corruption and Abuse of Power, was basically on an interview in Sirius XM, Breitbart News Daily, saying that Kamala Harris her campaign was funded in part by church lawyers, and as a result, between 2004 and 2011, she did not prosecute a single case of priest sexual abuse, not a single one. Now that, to me, sounds like buying of influence by the church, and more to the point, Kamala Harris selling it. And again, the idea of her being literally a heartbeat away from the Oval Office is frightening. It is absolutely terrifying. Over in Pennsylvania, we got to take another break for commercial. We got more news, and we're going to start the phone calls in a little while. But there's a bit of a wait. I got more news. We got to go. Welcome back to our show here, and getting on back to the news here. Over in Pennsylvania, their Democratic Governor Wolf is describing what's going on as peaceful protests. We've been seeing that in the corporate media as well. You know, cities are burning and windows are being broken, stores are being looted, but it's peaceful protests. Biden is out there saying it's a cry for justice, and apparently these Black Lives Matter protesters, rioters, whatever, went on a looting binge. Their favorite targets seem to be shoe stores, you know, for all those status running shoes. Big screen TVs were another hot item that was being hauled out of a Walmart, which was something like 15 miles away from where Wallace was actually shot. And apparently, artificial Christmas trees were a big item on the looters list. I guess it's the start of the Christmas shoplifting season. And so it's really out there. Now, apparently, according to Blaze reporter Elijah Schaefer, Philadelphia police lost control of the riot, and says Black Lives Matter rioters are specifically targeting and attacking white people. Well, they must have realized that burning and destroying Black-owned businesses was working against their public image. So now they're being a little bit more selective, but it's still bad news out there. Another story, this one is coming out of Tethasta.com, where apparently the Philadelphia Police Department ordered officers not to arrest rioters and looters, merely disperse them. And of course, they lost control of that, and the city was ransacked. Now, 11 people were shot overnight during the Philadelphia riots. And according to a story from Scoopy Web, apparently looters were shooting other looters, which, I don't know, it's maybe a self-correcting problem if we let it go on long enough here. And let's get on to COVID-19, because there is a lot happening over there. Interesting little article that came out of India Today, asking if low hygiene gives you better immunity against COVID-19. Now, this is a pre-publication paper by the Center of Scientific and Industrial Research, and it's basically reiterating what Donald Trump said about India and its hygiene standards. And the study by the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research showed evidence to suggest that the country's less than desirable hygiene levels have helped Indians fight COVID-19 better than other nations. Now, there had been quite a few studies lately showing that too much hygiene actually weakens your immune system, and this would appear to corroborate that observation. Getting to the international news, the third Karabakh ceasefire has been breached. This one lasted only 1 hour, and they're back to shooting at each other already here. Russian airstrike hits the headquarters of the Syrian Islamist group close to Turkey. 80 people were killed there. And apparently, Russia is successfully knocking Turkish drones from Armenian skies. And they're using an electronic warfare system known as Belladonna, which is named for a poisonous plant that gets its name from Renaissance women who used its extract to dilute the pupils of the eyes. And it's not just Renaissance women. Belladonna as a cosmetic was in use in this country until the early 1900s. Anyway, Putin In an effort to try and restore some limits to nuclear Cold Warism, as it were, Putin has offered mutual inspections of each other's military bases to NATO to prevent the deployment of missiles banned under the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Now, the treaty expired in August 2019 after the U.S. withdrew, claiming that Russia was in violation of the treaty. And now Russia is basically saying to NATO, send in your inspectors and look at the missiles that the U.S. government claimed were in violation of the treaty. So, you know, he's trying to calm things down and maybe try and get the START talks back on track here. Over in Belarus, the general strike has started, and they're basically saying they're going to stay on strike until Lukashenko steps down. And they're still insisting that their elections were rigged. And I'm very concerned that our coming election next Tuesday, it's obvious it's being rigged, and I hope it does not lead to the kind of social chaos we're seeing in Belarus. It conceivably could. So you might want to think about, you know, stockpiling a little storable food and water, and, you know, be prepared to hunker down in your home. The United States is imposing fresh sanctions on Iran ahead of the election. I don't know how many votes that's going to win for anybody here. Meanwhile, over in Iraq, protesters have come back to Baghdad on the one-year anniversary of the last major protest in Baghdad, saying their demands are still unmet. So things are still chaotic over there. Over in Sudan, protesters burned the Israeli flag. They're rejecting normalization with Israel. And according to the local newspaper Al Intibaha, the demonstrators chanted slogans against establishing relations with Israel and demanded that political parties who've supported the step revise their positions. So they could have riots on their hands. Now, a little bit of good news here. As you're probably aware, Israel has been trying to push this definition of anti-Semitism, which includes criticism of the government of Israel. You know, their point of view is that the only reason anybody complains about the government of Israel is they hate the Jewish people, which is kind of like saying the only reason people complain about the Nazis is they hate the German people. That's how silly it is, but that's what they're trying to push. Now, apparently, a majority of British universities are rejecting that definition of anti-Semitism on the basis that they're not criticizing Jews or the Jewish faith or Jewish food. They're criticizing the actions of a government that deserves to be criticized. And here in the United States of America, one of the reasons the Israel lobby hates that First Amendment is because it does guarantee us the right to criticize government, any government, especially one that has such an unhealthy influence over our own. Over in Nigeria, the entire police force has been mobilized in response to violent protests that have killed at least 69 people over there. Okay. Over in Venezuela, the opposition figure Leopoldo Lopez has left the Spanish embassy. Apparently, he went to Colombia. He's now heading for Spain. And apparently, he did all of this because he appeared with opposition leader Juan Guaido and called for a rebellion to oust Nicolas Maduro. So I guess he has, you know, decided to flee the country. All right, let's talk about the economy. First things first, it was a terrible day on the stock market. The Dow closed 943 down. They're blaming it all on the rising COVID-19 numbers. And so for those who hold the theory that the whole coronavirus thing is a hoax or it's being exaggerated, somebody somewhere is paying a major, major price for that. And it includes your 401ks, I hate to say. But we have reached peak government debt on a global level. 15 trillion with a T dollars of negative yielding bonds, and central bankers see no bubbles or risks. They're living in a dream world. Now, here is an interesting article from Zero Hedge. Will Germany repatriate its gold from New York if Trump wins the election? And it's a nice idea, and I think Germany should do it, but good luck actually getting the gold, because if you remember one of the episodes of America's Book of Secrets, was the gold conspiracy, which showed how much trouble countries were running into trying to get gold back that they had left at the Bank of England, the New York Federal Reserve, and various other U.S.-based gold depositories. The theory being that the gold has been rehypothecated, which is a fancy name for leased out the back door, and now they can't get it back. So good luck on getting the gold here. All right, we've got callers waiting on the line, and we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines. Area code 512-248-8252. We're going to start with Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I just wanted to say I sent you something that was a Washington Post series. I know you saw it back then because we talked about it in 2010. It was called Top Secret America.
Yes.
And it was a multi-part series. I think it got a Pulitzer Prize, detailing how much of the intelligence effort in the United States is outsourced to contractors and so on. Something like 70% of all the intelligence capability are private contractors. And this was, by the way, this was done before Jeff Bezos purchased the Washington Post for $700 million, which is like a tax write-off because it loses money. It's a tax write-off for him. But now he owns the Washington Post. And by the way, that was the last bit of real journalism that they did. They were awful during 2016 when he was there. They were a Russiagate shill. By the way, Bezos, who not only owns the Washington Post, which I said is nothing but a tax write-off for him, he also one of his big efforts, one of them among others, is he's clouding the entire intelligence community. You bring him into the cloud, and he has the contract for that. And so NSA, CIA, FBI, all that stuff, we're talking, $40-50 billion to get that effort done throughout the intelligence community. So he has been a part and parcel in the Washington Post far from 2010, where it was exposing the contractors and all that. Now he's a partner with them. And so now you see him. By the way, he's trying to buy CNN. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Now, Jeff Bezos CNN is also losing money, but that would give him, of course, the Washington Post and CNN in one billionaire's hands to go along with Zuckerberg, who's trying to own the voting system, and Bloomberg, who's trying to kill the Second Amendment and some of the other things. But nevertheless, it's interesting that he has partnered, of course, since Russiagate was partly central to Russiagate was the participation of the FBI and the CIA, Brennan, Comey, and Clapper, and all those guys, Mueller. So now we have the Washington Post, which is backing them up, of course, and not saying anything about Hunter Biden, but completely was beating the drum for all that, and will continue to beat the drum for the intelligence agency's view of things, because it's a moneymaker for Bezos. But all this is just getting down to something that I've talked about for a while, and I know Mark is from North Carolina has talked about it. We can't have these billionaires anymore, Mike. We can't have these guys like Bloomberg, and we can't have guys like Adelson and Bezos and Arnon Milchan and Haim Saban and all these people. We can't have people who owning Google. We can't have people who own YouTube. We can't have people owning Facebook. Zuckerberg. All these people are aligning politically in one direction, and it ain't for us.
No, it's not.
And we cannot have these people, these billionaires. And even though the lion's share of these guys are Zionist Jewish billionaires, that own all these things, including the networks and all the every movie we see, every TV show we see, almost all the big radio chains, almost the New York Times, the Washington Post, on and on and on and on and on, along with, of course, the banks and everything else. We can't have them controlling our voting and everything that they're doing. We're like playthings for these billionaires whose only interest, other than raping us, is supporting Israel over our own interests. So it's either they're raping us and stealing from us, or they're raping us for Israel. But either way, we're getting hosed, and we can't be the playthings of these billionaires. And listen, I'm basically a capitalist, but there's nothing that you can live a great life and have $50 or $60 million, but it's not enough to buy a war. It's not enough to buy elections. You can bend a lot of congressmen, but you can't buy the Congress. You can't buy the state legislatures, which in 28 of them have made it illegal to criticize Israel, for instance.
Yes.
You can't. It's not enough money to control the whole thing if it's overseen the correct way. But we can't have people with that kind of money. They're a danger to the human race. And
they're a clear and present danger to our country. That is very obvious.
And not just the country. I mean, here we have Gates, who wants to vaccinate everybody with these dangerous, untested vaccines, and on and on. I mean, it goes on and on. We're like an ant farm to these guys.
Yes.
They can shake it up, do whatever they want. Let's see what happens if we put honey in here. Whatever. I mean, we're like an ant farm for these people. We're playthings. And listen, when you control. Again, you can accomplish anything, Mike, if you can print money out of nothing and never be audited. There's nothing you cannot accomplish. So
and they've been playing that scam, and then they create money out of thin air, loan it out at interest, and they've been playing that scam on the world for 300 years now.
And if you can create money out of nothing and can't be audited, what cannot you accomplish? You can buy up the media, which they've done. You can buy up Congress and the courts, which they've done. And Soros owning all the DAs now. And I mean, on and on and on. They own everything. We cannot be these people's playthings. And frankly, they need to be. Their estates have to be confiscated down to like $60 or $70 million. Just and proclaim droits to the government. It just goes to the government, to the taxpayers, and then resold, publicly held, and with some real stringent rules about how that's done, including shouldn't be any dual royal people, which run everything.
All right. All right, well, Peter, I got to take a break for commercials, and I'm going to have to let you go. We've got other callers waiting on the line. We will be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to take another phone call, this one from David in Boston. Hello, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Oh, aloha, Michael. Hey, Michael, when people call in and compliment you on your great callers, definitely Peter from Los Angeles springs to mind. He's terrific. I love his calls. As I'm sure the rest of I'm sure I'm speaking for your whole audience. He is so good, and he doesn't get excited like me, but he really just puts out the truth, in a kind of in an even tone. But Mike, I was going to call in to support Layla. I loved her call yesterday, and the reason I called in so soon tonight. Yeah, I hope I can counterbalance that Don from Orlando. I thought he was so mean-spirited, and it was verbal abuse. I loved Layla's call, and she spoke the truth, and she was very patiently went through it. It's something I try to explain to these Zionist Christians when they're all in favor of exterminating and holocausting the Palestinian people. I try to explain to them what Layla explained to the audience yesterday. How they're actually killing their own people when they're siding against these when they're siding in with these Judeo anti-Christians against the Palestinian people. they talk about the body of Christ. They're actually destroying their own body. But anyways,
yeah.
But Peter reminded me of something. And if I get cut off with a commercial, I'd love Layla. I'd love to ask Layla, and I'm sure she must be, if she's familiar with Archbishop Elias Chacour. He's been nominated for a Nobel Prize about 3 times. A lot of people don't realize that you talk about the Roman Catholic Church, but there's a Greek Catholic Church too. It's called the Melkite Catholic Church, and he was the Archbishop of the Melkite Catholic Church, and his roots are in Galilee. He's associated with the Galilean Church that goes all the way back to the time of Christ and everything. But anyways, he spoke at St. Paul's Church in Harvard Square, Michael. A number of time flies, but I was going to say a few years ago. It's probably more like about at least 10, 12 years ago. And I was so impressed with Archbishop Elias Chacour, and I bought his books. I have his books. He signed the books, autographed them. One of the ones I remember is Blood Brothers, one of his first books. But I'd love, if Layla calls in, I'd love her thoughts on Elias Chacour and what he went. Well, I was going to get back to Peter, but what he went through is so heartrending, Michael. But what is so compelling about this man is he has loving forgiveness in his heart. He forgives the Zionists, these Jews, what they did to him, and it's unbelievable what they did to him and his family and his village when they first occupied Palestine. And the forgiveness he has, it's beyond human. It has to be divine.
Okay, David. David, I'm going to have to put you on hold. We got to take a break for station identification. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. We're talking with David in Boston. And David, can you repeat the name of that archbishop again so I can make sure to remember when Layla calls in?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Elias, Elias.
Okay.
And then Chacour, or some people I think say Chacour, but Chacour, 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 Elias Chacour.
Now you wanted to get back to Peter?
Now, Mike, on another topic, just on what Peter brought up, Mike. Did you ever listen to years ago, Myron C. Fagan's Illuminati trilogy, the recordings he made with Anthony J. Hilda?
No, I did not.
Are you familiar with? Oh, okay. Well, I know, John. It was part of John's awakening, just like it was a part of my big awakening. And when I say John, I'm talking about John Stadtmiller,
Yes.
And I never call him Mr. Stadtmiller. He says he looks over his shoulder to see if he can see his father. And I know the feeling. I had a father like that too, a dominating father and everything. But so when I say John, I remember hearing John. And I said, Jesus, I never again. That was part of John's awakening. It was a big part of my awakening. But anyways, Myron C. Fagan was so prophetic. He said when the Illuminati trilogy was about the CFR, and he said the CFR was the continuation of the Illuminati in America, and he talked about the global government and everything. He says when it's achieved, it's going to be achieved through the United Nations. But I remember, and I haven't listened to it in years, that I used to make copies and pass them out to people out of my cab and everything, the Illuminati trilogy. But he said it was going to be composed. When the conspiracy is finally achieved in America, we're going to be ruled over by about a dozen billionaires, he said, and a few scientists, a handful of scientists, and then he also said, and a economists. And when I think of these billionaires like Peter brought up, and I also think of these Dr. Fauci, they call them science, like Biden saying, I'm going to follow the science, like Dr. Fauci and Dr. Berserks and everything following the science and a few economists. But Myron Fagan, it was so prophetic. But if I can just quickly say this. They also talked about how the Negroes in America they would give their full backing to the Negroes in America to elevate them in the field of sports and in the field of entertainment and make stars out of them, sports stars and entertainment stars and movie stars out of them and everything. And it said that this is necessary to give them the status, the social status, so that all these white women will be attracted to them, and and promote intermarriage and miscegenation and everything. But Mike, a friend
David. Okay. Just as an experiment, would you pull the phone back from your mouth just a little bit because you're distorting?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I put it closer as I talk. Is that better, Mike?
I think so. Anyway, please continue.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Yeah, so you can. Okay, that's about the right. So, anyways, I had a friend up in Alaska, up in Anchorage, a good friend, and when he was from California, the San Fernando Valley, but then he started seeking his fortune in Hollywood and everything. But he became very good friends with a man named Mike Curb. And Mike Curb had this outfit called the Mike Curb Singers, and he went on to become like the president and CEO of MGM Records, and then he went on to become lieutenant governor, I guess, under Jerry Brown. But yes. I remember my friends telling me that Mike, and this was before I even listened to the Illuminati trilogy, and then it came back to me that my friend told me that Mike Curb said the orders came down from all on high that all love songs were to be sung by black men. No longer, any love songs were not to be sung by white men. They were to be sung by black men. And when I look back on that, Mike, I listened to I got to be quick, I listened to a station up here, The Music of Your Life, Bob Bintner, up here, WJIB up in Boston, and they play all the old songs, and I listen to these beautiful love songs sung by white men, going back before World War II and during World War II and immediately after World War II, and these beautiful love songs sung by white men. And then suddenly, just like my friend said, the orders went up. Then no more white men were singing love songs. Then it was Nat King Cole and Sam Cooke and, Motown and Smokey Robinson, Barry White. In other words, if you think about it, and the white guys were just stuck with this heavy metal and punk rock and roll, and which stuff, really music that generally speaking doesn't appeal to women very much, but they really love those love songs like like You Send Me by Sam Cooke and all this stuff. And then Mrs. Jones, we got this thing going. But anyways, Mike, it's worked like a charm because, these white women, they don't realize their brain has been tampered with. And at least up here in Boston, in cities like Boston, there's not that much heterosexuality going on. But if there is, the white women are with the black guys, Mike. And so apparently they've achieved that necessary social status in the field of sport, like the Illuminati trilogy said, in the field of sports and entertainment and all this stuff to make them, in other words, they're associated with just romance and good love. Man, if a white woman wants romance, real good romance and good loving, hey, forget about the white guy. You go with a black guy if you want good romance and good loving and everything, And it's worked like a charm. And these women, they don't realize their brain has been tampered with. But I'll shut up and see if you have any response to that.
I think we may well get responses to that. I'm dreading it. Anyway, David, I've let you go on long enough here. We're going to let you go and switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Doing fine.
Yeah, Mike. I was thinking. I was watching. Actually, listened to David Knight earlier today, and he played an interview like a computer type conversation that Fauci that little quack, had with people in Victoria, Australia.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And he was praising them for what they did with the Gestapo tactics. He basically said he wishes we could do that here. Felt like shouting to this little church, "Hey, Fauci, you know why you don't do it? That's not why it's not happening here. We have a constitution. We don't swear allegiance to some pedophile family in Buckingham Palace. Okay,
Okay.
some inbred pedophile family. We also have a Second Amendment, and we don't give up our guns the way Australia did. All right, that's why they don't try this here. They tried to a degree, but they usually back down when they're so far. And that reminds me of I was talking yesterday about the possibility of a civil war.
Yes.
And I think it was Layla called in and said, "Yeah, but it has to be organized organized militias." I agree. It absolutely would have to be organized militias. One idiot taking on an army or even a bunch of whole police force just going to get himself killed. Maybe take one or two of them with him, but just going to get himself killed, and then they'll just put him out. No, it has to be organized. And I believe if it really comes down to it, it is. Because we do have organized religions already. Organized the militias already. Okay? That's what I believe. And one other thing is, I made a new YouTube video today. I'm not even sure if it's posted yet to my my videos or not. I think it has because I made it about an hour ago. And about Leon Trotsky. Trotsky is involved with a lot of what we're seeing today. Trotsky was a revolutionary, and he was supported in this country before he went over to work to help the Bolsheviks overthrow the Tsarist government. He was put up in the Bronx by a guy by the name of Jacob Schiff, who was he was a not a Zionist, a Rothschild agent, and he also was supported by the Rockefellers, the Morgans, and people like that, all the big banksters, big oil execs of the time, the robber barons. So what happened is, when he went over to after the revolution, he got into it with Stalin. As bad as Stalin was, and he did murder a lot of people and all, and he was a paranoid, schizophrenic in a lot of ways. But Stalin was also a Russian nationalist. He was a patriot.
Yes.
He was a patriot. He wanted communism for Russia. He didn't want to push it around the world. He didn't want to use it as a globalist tool. While Trotsky wanted to use the Red Army today, the way that using the U.S. military today to push revolutions, regime changes all over the world. This is why a lot of your Russia-hating scumbags today, like Adam Schiff, who I believe is probably a descendant of Jacob Schiff. I cannot prove it. I've been trying to search. Now I'm using DuckDuckGo now. I got rid of Google. I'm going to see if I can find it on DuckDuckGo, because I believe he is related in some respects. And the thing is, these Trotskyites today, now they call them neocons and neoliberals, they have it in for Russia going back to the Stalin years. Because Stalin, after all, also had Trotsky killed in Mexico City in 1940. That's what I believe is behind a lot of this stuff. And it's behind a lot of these regime change wars. It's behind these, these crazies who really, like, what's that, Bill Kristol, Victoria Nuland, and her husband, Kagan, I think, Robert Kagan. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on, Mike. It all goes back to Trotsky, much of it. He was a globalist. He wasn't really a communist. He just wanted to push revolution around the world. And the big banksters of the day, the big oligarchs of the day, really, they loved him. And I hope people watch my. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make a very long video because YouTube will only allow me a few, short amount of time. I think under 15 minutes.
Yes.
So, but I put as much as I could in there, and I'm going to make more videos about this. Because the key to a lot of what's going on today is Trotsky. This is an evil SOB, Mike. He was a and I believe, by the way, Antifa is more Trotskyite than they are Stalinist or anything else like that. They're very, very similar tactics and all that what Trotsky used. And by the way, they love Trotsky.
Yes.
Because I got people, unfortunately, relatives of mine who are Trotsky lovers, and they also love Antifa. Okay, we share information on Facebook. Pretty soon, I'm going to be unfriended by them anyway. But they are relatives of mine. So, craziness. Sometimes you don't know. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, but that's basically it, Mike. I think a lot of the problems today are these Trotskyites. I believe they are in both parties of this country. They run both parties in many ways. This is why somebody like Tulsi Gabbard couldn't get the first base right away. She was a Russian, not a Russian asset. That's why they're saying now this time about Biden that this is just, this is just Russian information. It's not working. It's backfiring on it now. And Mike, right now I'm pretty confident that Trump is going to win by a landslide. He's going to need a landslide because with all the cheating going on, he is going to need a landslide, but I believe he's going to get it. I think the momentum is there, all right? Even though I'm not thrilled with the man, I realize, you got to go to the horse you give it. You know what I mean?
Yes. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yes. The enemy is too dangerous, and you see what kind of scum they'll put up. A guy like Biden who barely knows what planet he's on, and on top of it, as crooked as the day is long, with his son, with his crackhead son, and yet Democrats put up somebody like this. They're not the only Democratic Party. Well, this is a new and this is a Trotskyite party, even more Trotskyite than the Republicans. Even though the neocons and the Republicans are very, also Trotskyite, but the Democrats have become even more Trotskyite in their ways, right? And and it's basically it, Mike. People got to get wise. We are in danger, and God forbid if Biden wins this election. We are in so much. I think that might. Well, I don't think it's the end of the United States, but I think we're going to divide. I think the country is going to just split up. So basically what happened.
Yeah, I think if Biden wins, well, it almost doesn't matter who wins. The nation is facing a crisis that could, in fact, balkanize it.
It could, but I think we have a better shot if Trump is in there. Let's say the Democrats say what they threaten that they're going to cede, like Washington, Oregon, California. First of all, if they tried that, they would only get the coastal cities of these states. Most of if you go to the center of Oregon, Washington, California, or the eastern part of those states, those people are loyal Americans. They're middle Americans, okay? They believe in the Second Amendment. They're every bit of, they're basically middle Americans. They're not going to go along with that. So it would be basically these coastal cities, and they could be crushed in 2 minutes. Okay, and they could put in a blockade, and they'd be done right there. And plus, probably the militias from the center and the eastern part of these states would move on them also. They'd move into the cities and help the Navy restore order. So that's what I think, Mike. I don't think the idea that they're going to cede is any kind of danger. I mean, it may be a danger, but they'll be crushed in very quickly. That's why, even though I'm not thrilled with Trump, far from it, I got to go with him. All right?
Well, I understand that, yes. All right, well, Mark, thanks an awful lot for your phone call and your input, and we're going to switch over to Paul in New Jersey. Hello, Paul. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Michael, I got to give the kids on the left, even the Antifa kids, a lot of credit, because at least they're honest enough to realize they are socialists. The fact of the matter is, among the Trump supporters out there, they're voting knowingly for a socialist. It's just he's a socialist or who doesn't call himself socialist. As I said to you the other day, Donald Trump has run up the debt from $19.6 to $27 trillion at the moment.
Yes, and as I said, that
is,
in response to that before, a lot of that had to do with emergency spending to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. So it's not like Trump sat down and said, I have hereby decided I'm going to run the debt up. It's not like he had much of a choice.
well, yeah, but he was on schedule to get it up to 24 trillion if there was no coronavirus. He was right on schedule because last January it was about 23 trillion before the coronavirus happened. So he is spending at the same rate as Obama is and running up the debt at the same rate. Now, that's not very conservative for one. And it's definitely not an old-style form of government. Actually, it's exactly what John Maynard Keynes advocated. He was an open socialist, and he thought it was very good for the federal government to spend money, lower taxes, to increase economic activity, and tacitly run up the debt to forestall a recession.
Okay.
And Donald Trump has been doing that the past few years. He's been doing it. Also, we have the plunge protection team. That's as socialist as you can get. You have the which props up stocks and channels money over to 401ks. That's socialist. It's redistribution of money, whether it's either borrowed or printed from the Federal Reserve. And so any notion out there, and that's what's amazing about these guys with the Trump flags, trying to get in fights or whatever they want to do with the liberals in these altercations, they basically are socialists fighting other socialists. And on that note,
well,
thank you, Michael.
Paul, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right back to the phones to Fred in Las Vegas. Hello, Fred. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
We lost Fred, apparently.
We lost Fred, apparently, so we're going to go to Ray in Arizona. Hello, Ray. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I just an answer to your last call is that Trump has no intention of worrying about the debt because he's going to cancel it. His intention is to find criminality in the Fed and eliminate it. And so he's spending this money pretty much like running after credit cards and filing for Chapter 7. So, these guys that are trying to go into this finance and looking at historic cycles and trends, they're going to lose their shirt if they continue to go along the traditional lines.
Well, we keep seeing these Democrats and economists who keep coming out and saying, well, the debt doesn't really matter. At least that's what they were saying during the Obama administration, that the debt is just a number, a bookkeeping entry, and that it's not really expected we'll ever pay it back, which, of course, we can't.
Right. But that's a different consideration because the Obamas, they were going to terminate not the Fed, but the country. Okay? I mean, that's what the last president was supposed to be Clinton. And the Fed, the central banks, were trying to push this war, which Clinton would have gotten into. We would have been losing the war, and they would have used that as an excuse to collapse the currency. And we would have been in deep trouble where Clinton was going to bring in the UN to stabilize the nation. That was the plan. Okay? That was the actual 16-year plan to end this nation. And they got disrupted by Trump's election. So that's, but honestly, that's what was supposed to happen, and that's what they still want to try to make happen.
Okay.
But anyway, I called, I want to clarify something. We talked about the Chinese troops, and I meant to say Long Beach port was given to them in '98. They had missile guidance systems was given to them in 1997. The Panama Canal was given control in 2000. They've been in bed with the Chinese for decades, all the Democrats and a lot of the Republicans. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted, the Bundy project was happened because Chinese were trying to open a solar project
Yes.
around the fringes of where the Bundys were using as grazing rights. But anyway, the thing is, what I called about is the COVID was also part of the plan that's been for decades, that once they established effective control of this country, that they were going to release a really devastating version of COVID, and they would have used that as a reset, the Great Reset for the world. I'm sure you're starting to hear about the Great Reset from Europe.
I'm hearing a lot about the Great Reset. I'm also familiar with the Georgia Guidestones, which says the human population should be trimmed to only 500 million globally.
Correct. Yeah, everything's tied in, but the Great Reset that they're pushing now is still the usual suspects. The IMF, is going to run it, that type of thing. And basically what it is it's like a debt forgiveness for everybody, right?
Yeah, a jubilee.
And you have to give your possessions, you have to take the vaccine, you have to be relocated. You see what I mean? They're pushing it in a different way. They're pushing it, this is Plan B, because Plan A was foiled for them, right? This is what the Great Reset is, so people don't fall for that Great Reset. Now, as far as Trump and his alliance, he has a worldwide alliance. These people, if you saw what Trump, when he went to the Saudis, that sword dance thing, what they're doing was, hey, we're going to eliminate the central bank world's dominance. And they have their own type of program. You've heard of Gesara and Nasara?
I've heard about it, but I tend to think it's disinformation to get people looking in the wrong direction.
Well, see, the Nasara is actually a law that was passed, and it was supposed to be announced before 9/11, but, well, it wasn't. And the Gesara the Gesara is the global, and the Nasara is a national. And the Nasara is a basic where everything that the central banks took from us in usury from the beginning is going to come back to us. That's what the basic plan is. You know what I mean? So if you think about it, Mike, why all of a sudden peace is breaking out throughout the world? Who would have thought 10 years ago Israel and the Saudis were going to start, being...
Well, I don't know how well that's working out, looking at what's going on in Sudan right now. Anyway, listen, Ray, I need to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We got more callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Joe in Tennessee. Hello, Joe. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike. With that caller from New Jersey, anytime Trump spends money under the way he wants to define the terms makes him a socialist. Just because the amount of money we're spending, Ronald Reagan wasn't a socialist, but he outspent a lot of presidents before he did. And Trump, I don't consider him a socialist. He spent a lot of money building the military, spent a lot of money, like you said, with the COVID. It's how you spend the money. But I don't think the fight is really between, you see these riots and Antifa versus Trump supporters. That's not a fight about socialism. That's a fight about globalism versus nationalism. That's nationalism. That's and the people who don't like nationalism. It's the Antifa BLM fight. It's cultural Marxism versus American values. It's Satanism, basically. You will find a lot of Satanists in the Antifa movement versus Christendom. It's anarchy versus law and order is what it is. So to say it's socialism versus non-socialism, I don't know many Trump supporters that don't want Social Security. That's this form of socialism. So I just think that argument's kind of weak. But I called because of the election, and I was thinking about something when Trump won the election the first time, and Hillary didn't concede till like 4 a.m. And when Trump came out, he remember what he said? He said it's very complicated business. And I'm kind of wondering if he made a deal with Hillary, like, we beat you, you concede, and we're going to lay off putting you in jail and any investigations on you. Because why else would he say that? It's complicated business,
It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. Hillary and her people, we saw the rioting in the streets and everything, and it may in fact be possible because there certainly have been no real investigations into the Clintons or the Clinton Foundation. I know that there have been efforts more at the grassroots level to try and get something going, but it's always being blocked. The Clintons are untouchables. They're tied in with the Central Intelligence Agency. So are the Bushes. So are the Bidens, apparently. And we're seeing right in front of us just how much the deep state is going to move to protect Biden. Because if you really think about it, they're protecting all of them. Because if the Bidens go down in flames with all this corruption, then the American people are going to say, yeah, now it is time to investigate the Clinton Foundation and the Clintons. It is time to look at the Bushes. And it's time to look at all of the politicians who somehow become multimillionaires on the rather small salary of being a member of Congress. And I think that's why there's almost a sense of panic to somehow make this go away. And, we're seeing the corporate media basically out there. They're literally betting their own future on a Biden victory or a Biden theft.
Well, and I've called before and said I never understood why she conceded. It didn't make sense. But now thinking about it and what he said, it's complicated business. I mean, she's on the phone or his people are making communications. What's complicated about saying, hey, we won? So
there's nothing complicated about that. I think it wasn't a case of Hillary conceding. She had to concede, there's
no, she didn't. They're not going to concede this time unless there's a deal, and I think that's what they're doing. I think Biden's setting up for another deal. Like, do you want us to stretch this out and last, or are you going to give me the deal that Clinton got? I just, because I tell you that
that's a good thought. That's a good idea. Yeah, you could very well be right.
Deep state, this is about the last bit of pressure they're going to have in order to get this whole thing to go away. I mean, they got him dead to rights if Barr would just go after him. So maybe that's the deal. Like, all right, look, we'll let you win and you can declare victory, but everything goes away and you go ahead, Yeah. One quick question to Mark and Layla about guns and fighting. I disagree with the whole idea of a militia, in that a militia works right into the centralized authorities' hands, and that every militia out there has probably got 3 FBI agents reporting to central headquarters.
Absolutely. A lot of those militias have been organized by FBI undercover informants, so the FBI knows where they are.
And when they need a big press story, they wind them up and then have this thing like happened to Whitmer and happened once before, the Atari militia or whatever. Anytime the FBI looks bad, so they want to make themselves look good or make white people look bad. So I really think if it ever comes to blows or they start being a very authoritarian, totalitarian government, you really have to go the lone wolf mode. You really have to use the hive mind. And,
I'm really troubled. I'm really troubled by all this talk of militias and arms and lone wolf mode. I realize there is already violence in the streets of America, which I find appalling. Americans fighting against Americans. I'd really like to avoid an escalation on that. I would like to see more of a Gandhi-esque approach to dealing with these problems. And as I said earlier in the week, this revolution is not going to be fought and won with guns. It is being fought with keyboards. And to judge by the panic reaction we're getting from the corporate media, we seem to be having an effect.
You have to make it apparent to the powers that be that if they are going to go to the mattresses against the people, that the people are going to hurt them back. I mean, they can't just start releasing bioweapons and doing things and expect people to just be Gandhi. I hope we can be Gandhi. I hope there can be peaceful but it doesn't. I mean, it seems to me like Kennedy's words, where when you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make a violent revolution
inevitable. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're heading. And my point is that to fight a centralized power, you need to use decentralized tactics, because especially with the increase in technology and surveillance state,
yes,
forming militias and marching around and under banners and things is ridiculous. I do agree, though, with the keyboards is very important because there's ways to throw monkey wrenches into the system through your computers and such. It doesn't have to be violence with guns, but it does have to be decentralized. That's my whole point.
You're talking leaderless resistance, which is impossible.
Exactly.
Which is very, very difficult to put down. I imagine people might adopt the so-called cell structure of certain Middle Eastern groups, where each cell is very small and they're not known to the other cells, so that if they get caught, they can't expose the whole network.
Yeah, well, my days of doing stuff like this, we were never even thinking of any kind of violence with the 9/11 Truth Movement. But even us, with being unviolent, we were infiltrated, and they tried to entrap us, and we were just giving out DVDs. So I realized what it means if it goes to that they raise the stakes, and I also, my whole point about it is that if you join in a militia, you might as well be, you're gonna, everything about you is gonna be known, because the guy next to you is gonna be working for the state. So that was my point towards Layla and Mark in that. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we are going to switch to Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Your ears must be buzzing. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hi, Mike. I called initially to respond to Dave, but I think the last caller makes an excellent point. I was wrong in using the word militia.
Okay.
But and the reason I say that, he's right. They are always infiltrated. Now, I'm going to reveal something that my husband was actually one of those who was planted by the FBI in the Detroit, Windsor area in order to keep track of potential militia, as well as to keep track of the Arabs who are considered a potential threat to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, he used to actually attend militia camps. This was during the 80s, during the survivalist movement, and there were different militias. Now, I think one of the reasons I'm revealing that is because I think we have to accept the fact that not all the FBI is sinister or evil or polluted, and at one time they actually did serve a good purpose. However, they were always under the control of Israel. The reason my husband became interested in me was because after I went to Lebanon in 1971 and was pursued by the PFLP to be recruited as a hijacker like Layla Khaled, where I'm going back to 71. 2 years later, I went to the University of Jerusalem. And while I was in Lebanon, the Mossad tried to recruit me as well to be a counter agent, which I, of course, refused and came back to Canada. After that, Lebanon just exploded. So subsequently, in 73, I went to Israel, attended the university, the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. When I came back, suddenly my husband showed a huge interest in me. It's only 20 years later that he revealed to me that he had been asked to keep track of me, to find out if I was a threat in any way.
Well, there's a happy ending to the informant story.
Well, actually, he told me this because I was at that time getting phone calls from Yasser Arafat's brother, Fethi Arafat, constantly calling me and telling me it was my duty to the Palestinian people to come and at least come and join as an advocate for medical care for Palestinians, because he was the head of MAP, Medical Aid for Palestine.
Yes.
The problem was that he wanted me to leave Canada and move to Geneva, where the WHO was located, and also to Egypt, to Cairo, where the Medical Aid for Palestine was located. And I said, I can't. I've got, I will not do it. I will speak on your behalf for medical aid, only here from Canada. Because at that time, my husband was suffering from brain damage, from repeated concussions to his head. My mother was dying. The last of my three brothers was dying. and I had a young son to look after. So it was, so I could not do it. But it was then when, after Fatih Arafat phoned me again, pleading with me to join, that my husband, after I was done, my husband said, Layla, do not go. They will chew you up and spit you out. And be aware that you are being surveilled anyway. And I said, what are you talking about? And then he told me about 1973.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, and it had it not been for the fact that he had lost the inhibitions that normally he would have had because of his illness, I don't think he would have told me as much as he did. But you know, he was very good in the sense that his reports were accurate. None of the Arabs that were peaceful people ever underwent any harassment. Because he mingled with them and even would go to Toronto conventions. His job was to keep track to make sure that the U.S. was safe from potential subversives located in Canada, because I think they were then well aware of the potential of communism and other subversive movements in Canada that would use that open, porous border to go into the U.S. and perform their functions. Anyway, so to get back to Dave's question about Ilyas Shakur, Ilyas Shakur is one of many good men who are dedicated to humanity and to spiritual development, which is one way through which people can find a bond regardless of skin color or other ideologies. Unfortunately, the Nobel Prize has always been used as a political tool to advance politicians that the Zionists wanted to elevate, such as Lester Pearson, who got a Nobel Peace Prize he did not deserve. It should have gone to the very first UN mediator, who was a Swede, a noble man, a family of nobility, actually, Count Folk Bernadotte. He was assassinated in 1948 in Jerusalem, in September 1948, because he was the very first mediator, and his job was to bring peace between the Palestinians and the Zionists. And so it was Yitzhak Shamir who ordered the assassination and who boasted about it. But anyway, that Nobel Prize was never given to that man. It was given instead to Lester Pearson, who had already become a tool of the Zionists because he was so easy to blackmail. He was reportedly homosexual, as well as he came home from the Second World War stuttering and suffering from shell shock, even though he never even saw action. John English reported that in his first biography of Pearson, but now you can't find it because the stories of Pearson begin after any biography only begins with his life after 47. So the Nobel Prize is a political tool.
Yes, it is.
For Ilyas Shakur, yeah, exactly. And as for and the way the Nobel Prize has been manipulated is because the Rothschilds, Anshel Meyer, the original family name, they were in Baku, Azerbaijan, ironically, at the same time, both of them increasing their fortunes with the oil in Baku. And that was where they were both rivals, but eventually made their mutual deals. So that's how they know each other. But anyway, back to the question of how many priests. You know, one of the ironies is that the symbol of Jesus Christ was the idea that he was supposed to bring what he represented was supposed to bring peace among people and a sense of and a recognition of our humanity, of the oneness of our humanity. And instead the church, because of ambitious people and each one wanting their doctrine to be dominant over the other, all the churches of the Middle East in the old days, each of them had their own theory on the Trinity, the dual nature of Christ, the oneness of the divine God being within Christ. They ended up fighting over details like that so that each of them could have their power. And this is the problem where there's any kind of power structure, and the religious industries are that. So when you have good men like Ilyas Shakur, and I don't want to leave out the Muslims either, there were so many good imams who also sought peace. And we have to remember that the imams recognized Jesus Christ as a divine, as a holy person, a divinely inspired
Okay,
person.
Layla, we got to let you go. I'm sorry. We've got to take a commercial break. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of the program today. We're going to try and jam these last few calls in, starting with Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. Good day, Michael. Aloha. Yeah, Mike, what's on my mind? Some of your calls took a long time, but what's on my mind is you're talking about the voting, with the rigging of the voting. I do believe, like last 4 years ago, you had the illegals voting like crazy. You're going to have a lot of dead people vote counting for the demon rats. And that's something we got very concerning, that millions of more illegal aliens are here voting. Dead bodies are voting. And the demon rats, that's their modus of operandi. But you know what, Mike, what I really want to talk about is how come nobody on the Republican Party, I mean, really got in the face of Biden or Kamala Harris and asked them, hey, why did you repudiate what this guy's saying on Tucker Carlson about you, Joe Biden, why you, Hunter Biden, and you, Jim Biden, all you Bidens, bumbling Biden, lying Bidens. All the lying Bidens are getting away with murder. And a lot of your calls, they all keep so this crap up about, I'm not going to vote for Trump. Hey, don't vote for him. And you watch your country totally collapse. And you end up like Cuba. You end up like Venezuela or all these other third world countries, Nicaragua. No, we don't need that crap. And you know what? These blue state bluers, they're always going to be blue, Mike. And you know what? You were living in Hawaii. If you would have got out of that state, you would have, even if you voted and you're conservative, your vote would have counted for nothing. You're in Indiana now where your vote actually does count for something. And Claire's vote counts for something. And it's something to be proud of. Hey, man, the guy I want is winning. Not, how can you, I'd go crazy if I lived in some of them blue states. Every time I had an election come around, I would go out and vote and do everything I could to help the other candidate, but knowing I'm overwhelmed, I'm swamped. It's like a swamp, a tsunami coming at you with demon rats with their liberal ideology. I mean, come on. Not only are you living in a state, you're freezing your butt off up there in the New England states, you're voting for a bunch of, look, Mike, you know that one lady that she was just calling you. Let's get to the real fact of something. How come the Jews can call themselves the Jewish Defense League? Why don't we call instead of the white militias calling themselves militias, why don't they call them the White Christian Defense League? The White Christian Defense League.
They would be denounced as racist. They would be denounced as racist.
Well, wait a minute, Mike. I don't know about that. I don't know about it because the Jews get away with that. The Jewish Defense League in New York gets away with it.
They get away with a lot of stuff that other people can't do and say.
Well, I think the whites should say, you know what? From now on, we're going to be called the Christian Defense League, and we're going to defend our Christian honor. That's what I think. And I think, you know what? The media would have, they'd be tongue-tied. They'd be twisted up in like a pretzel. That's what you got to do with these schmucks. I call them putzes, Mike. You got a bunch of putzes out there. Putzes. That's exactly what they are. So I know you got another caller. So, hey, thank you for taking my call, Mike. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to take a call. I don't know if we've got time for it. Keith Rogers, what's on your mind? Keith dropped. Okay. Then Daniel in British Columbia, we've got like a minute left. What's on your mind? Also gone. Okay, well, that actually works out rather well. We are out of callers just when we're out of time, and we're coming to the end of the program. The music is going to start any minute here, and we're waiting for the rain to start here for our little flood watch. So stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We are literally in the fight of our lives here against Biden's and liberals' socialist transformation of our country. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.